What are you trying to say? Why can't anybody in this place understand what I'm saying? James Lee's voice boomed across the hotel lobby, echoing off marble surfaces, and drawing the attention of everyone present. Sir, if you're unable to communicate in English, you should have arranged for a translator. This is a regal hotel, not some common marketplace. Robert Eaton, the hotel manager, responded coldly, each word deliberately pronounced with scorn, his stare as frigid as winter ice. Among the crowd, affluent patrons began murmuring with barely concealed ridicule. Perhaps he just disembarked from his private aircraft, but hasn't taken the time to master English. All that wealth, yet lacking basic courtesy. These harsh, thoughtless comments sliced through James Lee's dignity like unseen daggers. Standing in Manhattan's most lavish lobby, surrounded by sparkling crystal fixtures and polished marble surfaces, he felt more isolated and chilled than he'd ever experienced. This marked his first encounter with such open prejudice in a venue celebrated for its sophistication and grace. A wealthy Chinese-American entrepreneur, accustomed to commanding respect wherever he went, now faced nothing but scorn and indifference beyond his worst nightmares. Nearby, Tiana Jackson, an African-American cleaning woman, who spent her days quietly working and watching, observed the entire incident unfold. Her chest tightened, and she instinctively gripped her cleaning supplies more firmly as James continued speaking in Mandarin. I made a reservation. Why won't someone verify it? Eaton simply smirked smugly and gestured his front desk team to disregard James's request. Inform him he'll need to wait. I haven't got time for individuals who lack proper etiquette. Tiana pressed her lips together as anger swelled within her. She comprehended every syllable James uttered. She knew precisely what he was experiencing, yet between them stretched an invisible wall, a barrier created by position, social standing, and race. Her attention drifted to the vintage, expensive luggage James had brought along, baggage that concealed his family's most treasured secret. At that instant, a thought crossed Tiana's mind. Should she break her silence now to assist a complete stranger? On the gleaming marble flooring lay a jade phoenix necklace, its soft emerald luminescence emanating quiet power amid the tension pervading the regal hotel. Nobody noticed the invaluable artifact except Tiana, her eyes fixed on the beautifully crafted ornament, her pulse racing with nervous excitement. She wanted to step forward, but her limbs felt frozen. Tiana understood all too clearly that any movement now might endanger her standing with manager Eaton, the same individual whose authority she'd witnessed, making life miserable for employees like herself. Just then, from a remote corner of the grand entrance hall, Eaton leaned close to an assistant and spoke in hushed, derisive tones. It's quite bothersome dealing with this type. Don't hurry to address his concerns. Let him wait, so he might learn some modesty. Though his voice was barely audible, Tiana caught every word. A cold sense of dread crept into her heart, a warning that this ordeal had only begun. While Tiana continued to hesitate, gentle whispers started spreading through the circle of wealthy guests surrounding the grand lobby. A middle-aged woman with blonde hair, dressed in Chanel, leaned toward her companion and spoke just loudly enough for others to overhear. These individuals always behave so entitled, yet they don't understand how to conduct themselves in an establishment like this. Wealth certainly cannot purchase manners. Soft chuckling followed, quiet but cutting enough to sting. The other elite patrons quickly directed their mocking attention toward James Lee, no longer attempting to hide their disdain. James probably couldn't grasp their words, but their body language expressions and sneers conveyed everything. He stood straighter, forcing himself to display the confidence of a successful billionaire. Yet the alienating atmosphere gradually undermined his composure. Several feet away, Robert Eaton delighted in the uncomfortable display. With arms folded and wearing an expression of cold satisfaction, he observed the problematic guest finally recognizing his disadvantage. Past 60 years of age, Eaton's imposing stature and piercing blue eyes gave him a commanding presence. During his more than 20 years at the Regal, he had established an unshakable reputation for refined professionalism and courteous service to the wealthy elite. Behind that flawless exterior, however, simmered deep-seated prejudice. A man who concealed ingrained bias beneath a mask of polite smiles. Eaton approached James again, intentionally speaking each word slowly and condescendingly, as if Mr. Lee lacked sophistication. Mr. Lee, as I previously stated, your accommodation won't be available until tomorrow. Perhaps you'd find a hotel better suited to your situation more appropriate. James's forehead creased as he detected the obvious provocation in Eaton's statement. In a voice more resolute and defiant than he'd ever used before, he spoke English for the first time, halting but resonating with authority. I reserved a room for today. I'm not leaving this place. For an instant, Eaton's smile became rigid, but he quickly recovered his composed, courteous mask. His eyes, however, stayed as cold as ice when he replied softly, I see there's been some confusion, Mr. Lee, but as you can observe, we cannot simply modify reservations at will. This is a regal hotel, not some roadside establishment. That final comment struck James's pride like an invisible sword. The hushed murmurs grew louder and more distinct. Those examining, critical stares felt like a shower of pins. James breathed deeply, struggling to maintain his calm, but his hands formed tight fists at his sides. Tiana remained motionless, her heart beating faster than ever. She had been employed at the hotel long enough to recognize that Eaton's discrimination extended beyond social class. Beneath his courteous facade lay profound racial prejudice. She'd observed colleagues of color and immigrant workers endure his subtle yet cruel treatment, and none had dared to speak out for fear of unemployment or social isolation. But witnessing this scene sparked a painful recognition within her. She, too, understood the devastating feeling of being diminished because of one's heritage, skin tone, or language. As Eaton turned to depart, he stopped. His gaze fell upon Tiana, still positioned at the lobby's edge. He shot her a suspicious glance and commanded with authority, Tiana, what are you doing standing there? This isn't a place for you to idle. Return to your duties. The nearby guest turned to stare at Tiana as if she were an anomaly among the luxury. Embarrassed and frightened, she lowered her head and tried to slip away, but as she turned, her eyes locked with James's. The anger she'd seen earlier had vanished. In its place, exhaustion and despair mingled with a silent appeal for assistance. His expression reached deep into her soul, and in that moment Tiana felt a small, fierce flame kindle within her chest. She understood that her silence came at too great a cost. If she remained quiet, James Lee would endure injustice. The truth would stay buried, and most devastatingly, she would never forgive herself. For her inaction, with her choice made, Tiana knelt down and retrieved the jade phoenix necklace on the marble floor, clutching the symbolic piece tightly in her palm. A wave of courage rose from deep within her spirit, urging her to move toward the Chinese-American billionaire. She took a steadying breath, gathered all her bravery, and walked toward James Lee. One small act of transform her life is life, and the destiny of the Regal Hotel forever. Tiana's pulse pounded as she took those small, resolute steps toward James Lee. The mocking whispers, the suspicious glances, and most intimidating of all, Eaton's icy glare made each footstep feel like walking across a taut, fragile wire ready to snap. Yet for the first time in her existence, she no longer wished to conceal the special ability she kept buried deep within her heart. She halted before James Lee and gently opened her hand. There rested the jade phoenix necklace, brilliant green and priceless, shimmering beneath the Regal Hotel's magnificent chandeliers. Her voice rose soft and clear, each Mandarin phrase flowing out like a beautiful melody in the silent lobby. Pardon me, sir. This belongs to you, doesn't it? The room fell into shocked silence. Every gaze shifted to Tiana, curious guests, stunned staff, and especially Eaton. James's expression transformed from surprise to profound emotion. His eyes widened in amazement, as if he couldn't believe someone here spoke his native language with perfect fluency. You speak Chinese? James Lee asked, his voice shaking with hope and wonder. Tiana gave a respectful nod, responding in flawless Mandarin. Yes, I resided in Beijing for 2 years as a young girl. I understand how challenging it must be to communicate in an unfamiliar country. May I assist you?" James accepted the necklace, his hand trembling with appreciation. He looked at Tiana as though she were a solitary light in a dark space. For a moment he couldn't speak. Then his tone grew gentle with sincere gratitude. "Thank you. Truly, thank you. I never expected to encounter someone here who could understand me as you do." Their touching moments shattered with the sound of heavy footsteps. Eaton strode over, lowering his voice to a threatening growl. "Tiana, I don't remember asking you to interfere in a guest's business. What is your position here? Surely you recall." Eaton's eyes, sharp as blades, revealed his anger and menace as he glared at Tiana. To him, her intervention represented betrayal, a violation of the unspoken boundary he'd long maintained between staff and influential guests. Tiana bowed her head, forcing composure into her voice. "I apologize, Mr. Eaton, but this guest was distressed, and I only wanted to help him comprehend what was occurring." Eaton sneered. His polished exterior couldn't completely mask the resentment bubbling underneath. "Miss Jackson, this hotel maintains strict protocols for guest relations. We don't employ housekeeping personnel as translators. If Mr. Lee genuinely requires assistance, I will summon a professional, not a cleaning worker." James, though not entirely fluent, caught the insult in Eaton's tone and words. His face reddened with anger and determination, the same steely resolve that had earned him billions in business deals. "This young woman just helped me understand what's been happening here, Mr. Eaton. I trust her more than anyone else in this establishment." Eaton froze, realizing he had severely underestimated James Lee's influence, but his arrogance and prejudice wouldn't allow him to surrender. He gave a cold laugh. "I'm sorry, Mr. Lee, but I cannot permit a housekeeper to handle professional matters. I hope you'll comprehend." James said nothing, only shook his head in disappointment. A billionaire accustomed to being underestimated for his Asian ancestry had experienced many slights, but never one so painful, right in a place renowned for its elegance and hospitality. Tiana stepped backward, shame and helplessness overwhelming her. She knew Eaton would never forgive her for this transgression. Just as she turned to leave, a firm voice called out behind her, "Wait, young lady." Tiana spun around. James looked at her with unwavering resolve. "I want you to serve as my personal interpreter during my time here. I will compensate you fairly. Please don't decline." Eaton's eyes widened. For the first time in his career, his authority felt genuinely challenged. His gaze moved between James and Tiana, sharp as a knife trying to penetrate their intentions. In that instant, he realized that Tiana, a mere cleaner he'd always assumed would comply without question, had become a force capable of overturning everything he'd constructed. Tiana met Eaton's hateful, furious stare and knew there was no retreat. She drew a deep breath and nodded to James Lee in perfect Mandarin. "Yes, Mr. Lee, I would be honored to help you." In that moment, Eaton understood the real conflict between him and the housekeeper he once dismissed had only just commenced. As soon as Tiana agreed to James Lee's request, she felt Eaton's gaze, sharp as a razor, cut through her defenses, forcing her to face a harsh reality. From this point forward, her relationship with the powerful manager would never be the same. But James Lee didn't allow her to dwell in that tension for long. He immediately gestured for her to join him in a more private corner of the lobby. He studied her carefully, his eyes bright with sincerity and gratitude. Then, in gentle Mandarin and with genuine interest, he asked, "I still find incredible. You speak Chinese so perfectly, as if you were born and raised in China. Can you explain how an American like you acquired this skill?" Tiana smiled warmly, feeling the protective walls around her beginning to dissolve. She took a deep breath and decided to share the little-known story of her past. "My mother is Elaine Jackson. She worked as a cultural liaison in Beijing for approximately 2 years. I was just a child then, around 12 years old. Initially, I really didn't want to abandon my homeland for a completely foreign nation. But my mother always told me, language is the bridge between cultures. You must open your heart to learn from and understand others. She encouraged me to study Mandarin, befriend locals, and live as if I belonged to that community. James Lee listened to every word, his expression changing from surprise to deep comprehension. His eyes reflected complete trust in the young woman sitting before him. His tone softened with respect as he replied, "Your mother was truly wise. Not everyone embraces that philosophy. I consider myself extremely fortunate to have met you today, Tiana." He paused briefly, then continued with complete seriousness and sincerity. "I realize this might cause you difficulties, but I genuinely need a reliable interpreter and assistant here at the hotel. I will ensure you're compensated appropriately for your abilities and the bravery you demonstrated today. Would you consent to be my personal assistant during my visit?" Tiana met James's earnest gaze, deeply touched by his kindness. Yet Eaton's warning glare still resonated in her thoughts. She knew he wouldn't dismiss this easily. Still, Tiana refused to live in fear and silence any longer. She straightened her posture, looked James in the eye, and nodded decisively. "I accept, Mr. Lee. I will do everything possible to assist you." At that precise moment, a familiar figure appeared at the corridor's far end. Eaton, holding a stack of documents, stood observing them with a dangerously sharp gaze. His face was flushed, every feature hardened by cold resolve. To him, Tiana's action wasn't simply helping a guest. It was outright betrayal of the hotel and his authority. Eaton turned sharply and stormed toward his private office. Inside the dimly lit space, the desk lamp cast shadows across his harsh, calculating expression. He powered up his computer and searched through employee files, his cold eyes settling on the name Tiana Jackson. In her 2 years at the hotel, Eaton had never really acknowledged her, just another insignificant staff member in his view. But now, that very invisibility had become a threat he could no longer overlook. He examined her file and discovered she lived in China for 2 years, her mother a respected diplomat. His eyes narrowed as his mind began plotting how to eliminate this new threat before circumstances spiraled beyond control. He knew he couldn't simply terminate Tiana, especially now that she enjoyed protection of a powerful guest like James Lee. Instead, he decided to apply subtle pressure, creating difficulties until she either resigned or made an error serious enough to justify her dismissal without any defender. He picked up the internal telephone and called human resources in a calm but authoritative voice. "Please send me the comprehensive work and disciplinary files for Tiana Jackson immediately. I want to examine her performance and behavior thoroughly." Meanwhile, in the Regal Hotel's grand lobby, James, Lee, and Tiana continued conversing quietly in the language few around them understood. James told Tiana more about his purpose for coming, an important meeting scheduled for the following day, and the difficulties he'd already encountered at the hotel. The more she listened, the more Tiana realized her role was even more crucial than she'd imagined. Behind those antique cases lay something far more complex that James couldn't yet reveal, but there was no time to think further as Eaton's mounting tension hung heavily in the atmosphere. Tiana knew she'd entered a battle she never expected to fight. Yet for the first time in her life, she felt she was exactly where she belonged, doing exactly what she was meant to do, and that gave her a strength she'd never possessed before. In her heart, she promised to face whatever consequences Eaton's rage might bring, because from this moment forward, her hidden talent would no longer be something to conceal, but her most powerful weapon against the injustice lurking in the shadows of the Regal Hotel. The crystal chandelier's pale illumination in the Regal Hotel gradually shifted to a soft golden tone as evening approached. In a secluded corner of the private tea salon, James, Lee, and Tiana were absorbed in conversation, unaware that a tall figure lurked just beyond the slightly open door at the hallway's far end. It was Robert Eaton. His eyes, cold as steel, tracked their every subtle movement. From his hidden position, Eaton began to overhear a story he never imagined would emerge in his lifetime, one powerful enough to destroy everything he had carefully built over the years. Meanwhile, Tiana took a gentle sip of green tea, her gaze tender as she looked at the Chinese-American billionaire across from her. She realized that beneath James Lee's aura of power and confidence lay a heavy sorrow he had yet to share. Slowly, James set his teacup down, his deep eyes reflecting the dim glow of the table lamp. He spoke in Mandarin, his tone measured, somber yet determined. "Tiana, you may be wondering why I've insisted on staying at the Regal Hotel, despite the obstacles and disrespect I've encountered here." Tiana nodded softly, her expression showing genuine concern and willingness to listen. James continued, his gaze drifting to some distant point, as if looking through time into the past. "This hotel was originally constructed on land that belonged to my grandmother's family. Her name was Maid, a brilliant, strong woman who owned an entire thriving block in central Manhattan during the 1940s. But everything changed in the early 1950s when the ancestors of the current manager, George Eaton, and a few dishonest partners deceived and stole all of that property." Tiana listened, amazed, each of James's words fitting together like essential pieces of a puzzle that explained his presence here. He paused for a moment, looking down at the jade phoenix necklace he held tightly in his hand. His voice softened, heavy with emotion. "My grandmother died in bitterness and despair. She would tell my mother about this land and the cruel betrayal by people she once trusted. She always believed that one day our family would reclaim what was taken. Before she passed, she gave this necklace to my mother with one final mission: return here to restore our family's honor and justice." Tiana felt her heart constrict at the heartbreaking injustice at the center of James's family history. She understood that the man before her was not merely pursuing a material inheritance. He was fighting to revive the dignity of a lineage long buried by injustice and neglect. Behind the door, Eaton clenched his fists, his face flushed with a mixture of anger and fear. He had never imagined that more than half a century later, the dark past his family had so carefully concealed would surface so unexpectedly. Every word James spoke was like a blade to the reputation Eaton had spent years building. Worse still, Eaton recognized that James was not only a wealthy billionaire, but also powerful and clever enough to uncover all the secrets he'd tried to bury. Eaton hurried back to his private office. Once inside, he collapsed into his leather chair, breathing heavily, his mind churning with dark, chaotic thoughts. He muttered bitterly, "Impossible. My family worked too hard to build this empire. I'll never let an Asian-American billionaire and that lowly Maid destroy everything." His fury and desperation crystallized into a cold, calculated plan. He knew that to protect his reputation and legacy, he had to eliminate the threat posed by James Lee and Tiana Jackson by any means necessary. Meanwhile, in the tea room's corner, James looked Tiana in the eyes, his voice firm with determination. "Tiana, I know this is a great request, but I need a trusted ally to help me prove the truth. This phoenix necklace is the most crucial piece of evidence. It's not just jewelry. It's the key to reversing decades of buried injustice." Tiana clenched her hand, her gaze more resolute than ever before. She felt more clearly than ever that her life had turned a new page, one she would never regret writing. "Mr. Lee, you can trust me completely. I will do everything in my power to help you restore justice for your family." James smiled, relief washing over him at the knowledge that he was no longer alone in this fight. In the cold room at the end of the hallway, Eaton began laying out the first steps of his sinister plan. He picked up the phone, his tone calm but laced with unspoken menace. "I want surveillance on every move James Lee and that employee Tiana Jackson make. Don't let a single detail escape. If necessary, prepare to take action. I must ensure those two have no opportunity to destroy what belongs to my family." He set down the phone, his gaze icy as it swept the darkened windows overlooking the Regal Hotel. Inside his mind, an uncompromising battle had officially begun, and he was prepared to do whatever it took to defend the power, prestige, and legacy he considered his own. Night had long since fallen, and the Regal Hotel lay wrapped in an unsettling quiet. After revealing the heartbreaking secret of his family's past, James Lee felt a weight lift from his shoulders. But he also knew that they were about to enter a dangerous, high-stakes battle. For Tiana, the spark of faith and courage newly ignited within her had become an invisible source of strength, steeling her resolve as never before. Meanwhile, Eden continued to monitor their every move in secret. Each step they took and every word they exchanged was reported back to him by trusted operatives he had quietly hired. Eden understood all too well that to preserve the legacy his family had stolen, he could afford no mistakes. That evening, guided by intuition and the scattered memories of his grandmother's story, James invited Tiana to help him search for clues inside the Regal. He remembered his grandmother, Maid, speaking of a hidden phoenix wing, a private chamber secretly designed and built on this very grounds when the family still owned the land. They moved quietly down the long, deserted corridors. Tiana stopped before a wall adorned with classic ornamental molding in a dim corner of the hotel. Her heart leaped when she noticed a tiny phoenix emblem carved, so subtly it was almost invisible. James hurried over, his breath catching with hope as he recognized the symbol. This was the secret sign his grandmother had described. He pressed his jade necklace against the carving. A clear click echoed, and a concealed door slowly swung open. Inside the dimly lit chamber, James and Tiana gasped at the vast, perfectly preserved space. The walls were covered in antique patterned wallpaper, and large wooden cabinets brimmed with neatly organized books and files untouched for decades. At the room's center stood a glossy black ebony desk, dusted by time but still exuding grandeur. James approached the desk with reverent care, gently pulled open a drawer, and felt his heart stop when he discovered a large envelope sealed with classic red wax. Hands trembling, he opened the letter and read the crisp English handwriting. To Mrs. Maylin, I, George Eaton, hereby confess all the sins and wrongdoings I committed against you and your family. Through deceit and coercion, I unfairly seized your land, exploiting your difficult circumstances and your trust. I know this truth can never undo the harm you suffered, but I hope this letter will one day help your family reclaim justice. James stood in stunned silence, each word in that letter cutting straight to his heart. This was the proof he had searched for all these years, a confession from the very man who had betrayed his family. Tiana hurried beside him, eyes wide with awe at the letter. Yet the letter was only the beginning. Around them lay priceless artifacts, ancient documents, land maps, and the original architectural blueprints of the hotel, all confirming that James's grandmother had indeed laid the foundation for the Regal, and that this phoenix wing preserved the most vital historical evidence. But as they absorbed their discovery, a shadowy figure lingered in the hallway, one of Eaton's covert agents, secretly recording everything with a miniature camera hidden in his sleeve. Minutes later, Eden stared at his phone screen, breath heavy with rage. Clutching his phone, his eyes blazed with unprecedented fury and panic. Decades of secrets and schemes were now on the verge of exposure in a single instant. He stormed from his office and, voice icy, dialed a private security detail he used for his most clandestine operations. You must act immediately. 2 people in the hotel are in possession of documents that cannot be allowed to go public. Recover every piece of evidence at any cost, and under no circumstances let them discover who's behind this. He hung up, his grip tight with wrath. He knew that if those documents reached the light of day, his family's empire and reputation would vanish like smoke. Yet he also knew James Lee and Tiana were no quitters. This fight had grown beyond personal vendettas. It was now a struggle between justice and corruption, between truth and the darkness of the past. Inside the secret Phoenix wing, James and Tiana exchanged determined looks. They understood that once this door had opened, there was no turning back. But rather than fear, it only strengthened their resolve. James squeezed Tiana's hand, voice ringing with unwavering conviction. Tiana, we have the truth. Now our mission is to protect it at all costs. No matter what happens, I will never back down. Tiana returned his grip, her eyes shining with steadfast resolve. Mr. Lee, you can count on me. We will reclaim the justice that was stolen. In the shadowed depths of the Phoenix Wing, two people from different worlds stood together on the same front line, ready to face the sinister plots Eaton had already set in motion behind the regal facade of the Regal Hotel. The Regal Hotel had never felt so stifling or unnerving under the cover of night. Tiana and James slipped out of the secret Phoenix Wing chamber in intense silence. When their eyes met, they shared both hope and wariness of the dangers lurking around them. They fully understood that the files they'd uncovered weren't merely historical curiosities. They were the critical puzzle pieces capable of appending the fortunes and power of many, especially Robert Eaton. As they tried to calm their anxieties and plan their next move, Eaton, the man behind all their turmoil, had already begun to act decisively. The darkness of his greed and desperation had completely clouded his better judgment. He was determined to protect his family's stolen legacy at any cost, no matter how far he had to cross the line between right and wrong. That very night, while the hotel slept, two unfamiliar figures hired by Eaton crept quietly down the top-floor corridor where James Lee was staying. Under the faint hallway light, their professional, deliberate steps were clear. Within minutes, they picked James's lock with sophisticated tools, rifled through his luggage, and brazenly made off with every vital document. George Eaton's confession letter, the architectural plans, and all those priceless historical artifacts James had discovered. Then, as if they'd never been there, they vanished into the darkness in under 10 minutes. The next morning, James burst into Tiana's room in a fury of panic and disbelief. "Tiana, it's all gone, the files, the letter, everything. They ransacked my room overnight." Tiana raced to his suite, her eyes wide with concern at the chaos before her. She realized at once that Eaton had retaliated swiftly and with alarming boldness. Just then, the door cracked open, and security guard Kevin Peterson, young and visibly tense, stepped inside. He glanced around warily before closing the door and hurrying to Tiana, face grave. "Tiana, there's something you need to know. I saw something I shouldn't have." Sensing Kevin's tension, Tiana nodded for him to continue, her heart pounding. "Last night, while reviewing security footage, I saw Mr. Eaton meeting two strangers at the rear fire exit. They handed him a large file bag and something else I couldn't identify." Kevin hesitated, then pressed on, his voice steady and anxious. Then, Eaton and those two went straight up to Mr. Lee's floor. I saw it clearly, but Eaton ordered us to erase last night's footage. As James absorbed Kevin's revelation, rage and disappointment washed over his face. Tiana understood that this had become more than a dispute. It was now a fierce battle between justice and power, truth and lies. Turning to Kevin, Tiana spoke with gratitude and conviction. "Thank you for telling us, Kevin. You were braver than many here." Kevin nodded, though fear still lurked in his eyes. "I couldn't stay silent after what I saw, but now I'm worried Eaton will find out, and I'll be in big trouble." Tiana squeezed Kevin's arm protectively, her tone firm. "You're not alone, Kevin. We'll protect you, but we need your help. See if you can restore that erased footage." Kevin, trembling yet resolute, replied, "I'll do everything I can. I don't want to aid any lies." Meanwhile, in his private office, Eaton sat clutching the stolen documents, a cruel satisfaction glinting in his eyes. He believed that with this evidence in hand, he could control the situation and snuff out the struggle James and Tiana had ignited. Yet Eaton didn't realize that his ruthless actions had only fanned the flames of determination within James and Tiana. They knew now this was no longer just a fight for family honor or personal justice. It was a war against a dark, dangerous power Eaton had long concealed. James moved to a window, gazing out at the city skyline with unwavering resolve. "Eaton thinks he can erase the truth by stealing our evidence, but he's wrong, Tiana. The truth always finds a way to be revealed. We will never give up." Tiana met his gaze and nodded with equal determination. "We'll get back what's ours, Mr. Lee. Eaton started this battle, but we will be the ones to finish it." In the tense hush that still hung over the Regal Hotel, Eden had no inkling that his reckless cruelty had only made James and Tiana more determined and powerful than ever in their fight for justice. When the sun first peeked over the horizon, the Regal Hotel lay under a strange hush, as if its elegant calm had something unsettling beneath. In the wake of the night's upheavals, a tense atmosphere crept through every corner. Eden strode into the staff conference room with icy, hostile eyes and an air of absolute authority, like a predator poised for a decisive strike. "I want everyone here to listen carefully," Eden began in a calm but steely tone, his gaze sweeping across the worried faces before him. "Due to actions that have seriously damaged the reputation of the Regal Hotel, I am terminating the contracts of the following individuals: Tiana Jackson, Kevin Peterson, and anyone found to have colluded with or supported Mr. James Lee." Each word landed like a freezing knife, sending a wave of panic through the ranks. Kevin sat rigid, his face ashen with shock. Tiana felt her heart pound with righteous anger. It was clear Eden was issuing an all-out challenge, leaving no room for concealment. Without another word, Eden turned on his heel and exited triumphantly, convinced that by eliminating these threats, he would regain total control. But he didn't realize that this move only pushed Tiana and James into a more fierce battle, one where truth and justice were the only goals. There was no time to hesitate. Tiana's voice trembled, but rang with resolve as she approached James. "We have to get out of here right now." Eden's moved beyond mere warnings. James nodded, fully aware of the stakes. They hurried toward the main exit. But as soon as they stepped into the lobby, they sensed the hotel security converging on them from all sides. "Stop right there," one guard shouted, his voice booming with authority. With no choice but to flee, Tiana and James dashed down the long corridor and burst out onto the bustling streets of New York. Their pursuers' footsteps thundered behind them, dark silhouettes in pursuit. They wove through crowded sidewalks, pushing past startled pedestrians and honking cars. Tiana's heart pounded, but she squeezed James's hand, determined not to let go during this breathless chase. A sleek black car roared to block their path, but James yanked Tiana into a narrow alleyway just in time. They sprinted past overflowing garbage bins, the guard shouts echoing behind them, "Don't let them escape." Bursting into a cramped street market, they knocked over stalls in their desperate flight, creating chaos in their wake. Finally, they slipped into a jam-packed subway station. The train's doors slid shut just as the guards reached the platform, leaving angry faces behind. Gasping for air as the train hurtled through the city's dark tunnels, Tiana turned to James, worry and determination in her eyes. "We need somewhere safe to lie low. My mother's place. Eden would never think to look there." James agreed without hesitation. They disembarked at the next stop and made their way to the modest Harlem brownstone where Elaine Jackson, Tiana's mother, lived. It was a small, cozy home nestled among leafy trees, a stark contrast to the chaos they fled. Elaine opened the door, eyes wide with surprise at the sight of her daughter, disheveled and breathless. "Tiana, what happened?" Tiana collapsed into her mother's arms, pent-up fear and exhaustion pouring out. "Mom, we're in grave danger. I'll explain everything, but first we need to be safe." Elaine ushered them inside and locked the door. In the snug living room, Tiana and James recounted every detail. Eden's betrayal, the stolen family secret, the terrifying chase. Elaine listened, her wise eyes fixed on James. When they finished, she spoke firmly, conviction resonating in her voice. "James, my mother always said truth can only be hidden for so long. People can run from justice, but they can never erase what they've done. You two are not alone in this fight. This home will be your refuge until you reclaim the justice that was stolen from you." Back at the Regal Hotel's office, Eden slammed his fist on the desk, fury and desperation in his voice as he learned of their escape. "You're all useless. I want them found immediately, even if I have to turn this entire city upside down." He strode to the window and stared down at the crowded streets below, bitterness and fear etched on his face. Eden knew that as long as James and Tiana remained free, he'd never have peace. Safe inside the Harlem brownstone, James and Tiana exchanged a look of unwavering determination. Though they knew many challenges lay ahead, they refused to surrender to power and deceit. Their battle to reclaim justice had only just begun, and they were ready for whatever came next. In the safe little house of Elaine Jackson in Harlem, the late afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, casting everything in a warm yet anxious golden glow. Tiana and James had just survived a heart-pounding escape, and now they understood that their struggle was no longer just a personal fight. It had become a matter of justice, a sacred mission to restore honor and unveil truths long buried. Wasting no time, Tiana reached out to Amanda Chun, president of the Chinatown Historical Society. Sharp, intelligent, and decisive, Amanda was renowned in the community for her historical investigations into immigrant stories, especially those forgotten or deliberately concealed. When Amanda heard James and Tiana's story, she immediately agreed to meet them the next day at a discreet coffee shop on Mulberry Street. There she sat, calm but passionate, flanked by Sarah Winters, a young but tenacious journalist known for exposing powerful scandals in New York. Sarah had heard of Eaton's reputation for years, but never had the proof she needed. Amanda spoke first, meeting James's gaze with sincere resolve. "I've long heard rumors about you and your family, but I never imagined I'd meet Mei Lin's direct descendant. I'll do everything in my power to help you seek justice." Sarah added, her voice firm. "If we can uncover indisputable evidence, this won't be buried in silence. Eaton will answer for his crimes." Their words bolstered James and Tiana's spirits, affirming that they were not alone. Immediately, they plunged into a rigorous hunt for historical records, a grueling yet hopeful quest. Over the following days, under Amanda's guidance, they pored over thousands of pages at the New York Public Library, local archives, and small neighborhood museums. Piece by piece, the dark conspiracy of the Eaton family emerged in chilling detail. Old deeds, letters, and land sale records not only corroborated George Eaton's confession, but revealed a criminal network involving many powerful figures in mid-century New York. Eaton, however, was not idle. From his opulent office at the Regal Hotel, he watched every development with icy fury, unable to endure the thought of his family's reputation and fortune crumbling. He resolved to take ever more ruthless measures. That night, as Tiana reorganized crucial documents, her phone buzzed incessantly. A stranger's voice whispered just loud enough to unervingly chill her. "Tiana Jackson, I can't reveal my identity, but you must know this. Eaton's men are watching you closely, and he plans to destroy both your reputations and your lives. Be careful. He won't stop at anything." The call ended abruptly, leaving Tiana in a state of panic. She immediately alerted James and their allies. They understood that Eaton, cornered, would resort to any tactic to win. From that day on, they moved with extreme caution. Amanda and Sarah meticulously duplicated every record and stored copies in secret locations. James and Tiana altered their routes whenever they left the house, remaining on constant alert. One tense evening, Sarah met Tiana at a quiet East Village bar. Her face was grave as she spoke. "Tiana, I've just learned Eaton didn't stop at surveillance. He's hired a notorious private investigation firm, experts in dirty tricks, capable of smearing anyone who opposes their client. They'll fabricate lies to paint you both as villains." Tiana felt each word like a cold knife, realizing this fight was no longer just about history or justice. It was about their very lives and reputations. "What do we do, Sarah?" she asked, voice trembling but determined. Sarah gripped her hand, eyes blazing. "We have to act fast and decisively. I'll publish the exposé as soon as possible. But first, you need to be safe. Brace yourselves. Once the story goes live, Eaton won't let us be." Meanwhile, in his Regal Hotel office, Eaton sipped a stiff drink, his hands trembling with rage and fear. He knew that if those historical revelations went public, everything he'd built would vanish. He snatched up the phone, voice icy and brutal. "Take them out. Now. No excuses. I want both of them neutralized before this spirals further." He hung up, his eyes full of hatred as he stared out at Manhattan's nighttime skyline, showing no mercy. In the small safe house in Harlem, James squeezed Tiana's hand, his gaze steady and resolute. We cannot back down. Justice lies ahead, and now we fight not only for my family, but for everyone hurt by Eaton's injustice. Tiana nodded, her heart brimming with strength and unshakable faith. She knew the final battle had begun, and this time they would not fail. The sun rose slowly over New York City that morning, but never had its light felt so weighty or meaningful. Tiana awoke in the little Harlem room just as her phone began buzzing insistently on the bedside table. On the other end was Sarah Winter's excited voice, burning with urgency. "Tiana, the story is on the front page. The truth is finally out." In an instant, Tiana's sleep evaporated. She bolted upright and powered on her laptop. There, emblazoned across the New York Tribune's homepage in bold, commanding type was a headline: Regal Hotel's 70-year cover-up exposed. Historic land fraud revealed. Sarah's powerful article laid bare the scheme to steal Mei Lin's land, complete with documentary evidence, photographs, and George Eaton's own confession. It even detailed how Eaton continued to conceal the truth, threatening witnesses to keep them silent. Within hours, the expose had spread across media outlets and social networks. Everywhere, people were talking, outraged. Hashtags like hashtag Justice for James Lee, hashtag Truth at Regal, and hashtag Stop Eaton surged to the top of trending lists. Back at the Regal Hotel, tension crackled through every hallway. The board of directors called an emergency meeting. Richard Wells, the usually neutral board chair, spoke with firm resolve. "I'm ordering an immediate internal investigation. Mr. Eaton, we need a full explanation from you." Pale and forced into composure, Eaton rose slowly from his seat at the head of the table. His voice was cold and defensive. "All of this is fabrication, a plot to destroy the reputation of the Regal Hotel and of me personally. I won't let these people dismantle everything my family has built." But his denials rang hollow. Outside the hotel, a massive crowd had gathered, chanting for justice. Their voices boomed to megaphones. "Justice for James Lee. We won't stay silent on stolen history. Eaton must resign." The board could no longer ignore the pressure. Major news outlets joined in condemning Eaton's irresponsibility and demanding full transparency from the Regal. Chinatown leaders and social activists rallied, amplifying the public outcry. In his private office, Eaton fumed, slamming his fist on his desk. Desperate, he called for any means necessary to stop James and Tiana. "I don't care how. You must make those two disappear. Silence them once and for all." But the more fiercely Eaton fought back, the more his cruelty and desperation were laid bare. Threatening messages began arriving on James's and Tiana's phones. Anonymous calls hinting that their lives were in grave danger. In the safe Harlem home, James squeezed Tiana's hand, worry and determination warring in his eyes. "Tiana, now is a crucial moment. We cannot let fear dim our resolve. The truth is out and justice is on our side." Tiana met his gaze, her spirit bolstered by his steadiness. "You're right, James. We can't give up now, especially not when the whole world is watching." Eaton's desperation makes him more dangerous than ever. As they planned their next move, the doorbell rang. Both startled, they braced themselves. When Tiana peered through, she breathed a sigh of relief. It was Amanda Chun and Sarah Winters. The two strode in, faces set with unwavering resolve. "Tiana, James, we're here to protect you," Amanda declared, stern but warm. "The community stands with you. Eaton won't dare move against you now." Sarah nodded in agreement. "The media and public pressure are immense. It's time for you to go public yourselves. Eaton only has power while we stay silent. Let's show him we won't be bullied or lied to." Tiana and James exchanged resolute looks. They knew there was no turning back. They agreed to hold a press conference right in front of the Regal Hotel, speaking the full truth, not just to defend themselves, but to ensure justice would truly prevail. Inside the Regal, Eden scrambled for ways to avert the impending disaster. But no matter how fiercely he fought, he recognized with bitter clarity that his world was crumbling under the force of truth and the courage of those he'd underestimated. The final stage of the battle had begun. This time, with the media, the community, and the unassailable power of truth squarely on Tiana's and James's side, Eden would not escape the reckoning he so richly deserved. That morning, the New York sky was shrouded in a tense mist, heralding an unavoidable showdown. Outside the Regal Hotel, the protest crowd still thronged with signs and chants. But inside the grand conference room, the atmosphere was even more charged. James and Tiana entered side by side, their eyes alight with unprecedented resolve. This was a decisive moment they had been waiting for, a direct confrontation with the most powerful figures at the Regal Hotel, who would at last have to hear the truth buried for decades. Seated around a massive walnut conference table, the entire hotel board wore grave, anxious expressions. Richard Wells, the board chair, opened the meeting in a calm but cautious tone. Mr. James Lee, Miss Tiana Jackson, we have heard very serious allegations, and today you will present the evidence you have gathered. James rose, his gaze unwavering and voice steady yet compelling. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not here seeking pity or sympathy. I am here seeking justice. For my grandmother Maylin, who was ruthlessly defrauded by Mr. Eaton's ancestors, robbed of her property and my family's honor. This is no longer a private matter. It is a historical truth that must be revealed. At that moment, the conference room door burst open. Eden stormed in, furious and agitated, his voice booming. This is baseless slander. You cannot believe these fabrications. I have worked tirelessly for the good of the Regal Hotel for years. Before Eaton could continue, James met his glare with calm firmness. Mr. Eaton, I am sorry to say you can no longer escape the truth. We have clear evidence of your family's wrongdoing. Tiana stood and placed her laptop on the table. On the large screen, images, documents, and historical records flickered into view, irrefutable proof of the Eaton family's fraud against Maylin. Eaton's face went ashen, but he desperately denied it. These are all forgeries. You seek to destroy me with lies. Just then, the door opened again. Kevin Peterson and Heather, former Regal employees, stepped in. Kevin advanced, courage in his eyes, holding out a USB drive. I recovered the security footage Mr. Eaton ordered deleted. I saw him and those intruders break into Mr. Lee's suite to steal the crucial evidence. Heather followed, her voice trembling but resolute. I admit Eden coerced me into spying and stealing documents, but once I learned the truth, I could no longer stay silent. The conference room crackled with tension as each new piece of evidence was laid bare. Eaton's attempt at excuses fell into weak, helpless shouts. At that moment, Grace Wong, a dignified older woman with a kindly strength, entered. Every board member stared in surprise. Stepping forward, Grace spoke with powerful clarity. I am Grace Wong, now 85 years old. I am here to testify that I once knew Maylin, James Lee's grandmother. As a child, Maylin helped my family when we faced discrimination. I remember the day she was forced to leave here under the Eaton family's oppression. I have waited a long time for this day to tell the truth. Her words struck the room into absolute silence. Eden nearly crumpled, unable to find any rebuttal to such living testimony and overwhelming proof. Richard Wells fixed Eden with a stern gaze. Mr. Eaton, we have heard enough. With all this evidence and testimony, we have no choice but to terminate your management contract immediately. Eaton stood frozen, eyes blazed with despair and rage, utterly powerless before the irrefutable truth. Wells then turned to James and Tiana with evident respect. Mr. Lee, on behalf of the Regal Hotel Board, I sincerely apologize for the suffering your family endured. We will formally recognize your legal ownership of the Regal and ensure these historical injustices are righted. In that moment, James felt the greatest burden of his life lifted. He turned to Tiana, gratitude and admiration shining in his eyes. She offered a gentle, tear-streaked smile, moved by the profound significance of the moment. Eden sank into his chair, head bowed, his defeat bitterly written across his face. For the first time, he faced the consequences of his own and his ancestors' wrongdoing. Outside, the protest crowd erupted in cheers as news of James and Tiana's victory spread. They knew justice had prevailed, and history's truth had finally been restored. James squeezed Tiana's hand, his voice soft but powerful. "We did it, Tiana. Justice has come home." Tiana nodded, hope bright in her eyes, ready to embrace a new future, one no longer overshadowed by injustice, but forever protected by truth and fairness. Immediately after the conference room doors closed behind Eaton, a fresh breeze swept through, gentle yet invigorating, as if it had carried away all the stifling gloom of the past. James stood center room, surveying the board members with pride and unwavering resolve. From this moment on, the Regal Hotel will be more than just a luxury property. It will stand as a symbol of truth, justice, and cultural reconciliation. We will rewrite this venue's history in a manner both worthy and complete. The board members nodded in agreement, all recognizing that a new chapter had officially begun. James was quickly confirmed as a major shareholder, owning 25% of the Regal stock, making him one of the most powerful voices in every decision. Wielding his new influence and responsibilities, he launched sweeping reforms to transform the hotel into an emblem of cultural diversity and a firm stand against all forms of discrimination. One of his first decisions was to appoint Tiana as Director of Culture, an unexpected move for many inside the hotel and in the community. But it soon became clear that no one was better suited. Her multicultural background, linguistic talents, and demonstrated courage during their battle had proven her the ideal choice. In her new role, Tiana immediately set about creating a comprehensive history and anti-bias education program. She assembled a team of experts and advisors, including Amanda Chun from the Chinatown Historical Society and journalist Sarah Winters. Together, they developed interactive courses and exhibits, teaching staff and visitors alike the values of fairness, respect, and unity. The Regal began to evolve dramatically. The once quiet tea lounge was reborn as the Phoenix Room, a vibrant cultural hub hosting art exhibitions, musical performances, and cross-cultural events. A prominent tribute to Maid graced the center of the room with a detailed historical plaque, helping guests appreciate the story once buried by greed and selfishness. One sunny morning, Heather, the staffer who had formerly obstructed and opposed Tiana, stepped into Tiana's office looking uneasy. Tiana looked up, surprised to see Heather there, eyes full of remorse. "Tiana," Heather began, her voice trembling, "I know I did many wrong things before, and I don't expect easy forgiveness. But after everything that happened, I want you to know I've changed. I want to contribute to the educational program you are building." Tiana regarded Heather for a moment, sensing the genuine sincerity in her words and eyes. She rose, stepped forward, and gently placed a hand on Heather's shoulder. "I'm glad to hear that, Heather. Everyone makes mistakes, but not everyone has the courage to acknowledge and correct them. We can always start anew." From that moment on, Heather became one of Tiana's most enthusiastic allies. Heather's transformation stood as powerful proof that, even when shrouded in darkness, people can still find the light of forgiveness and kindness. As for Eaton, after his dismissal, he all but vanished from the public eye. Those who once knew him now only caught rumors of his solitary life, steeped in regret and rage. But James and Tiana no longer concerned themselves with that. They understood that building a fair, hopeful future mattered far more. In the weeks that followed, the Regal continued its remarkable metamorphosis under James's leadership and Tiana's innovative cultural stewardship. Major newspapers ran inspirational headlines like "The Regal Hotel," where history is restored and cultures unite, and "From symbol of division to model of multicultural harmony." Visitor numbers surged, and the local community's skepticism gave way to admiration. The Regal was no longer famous just for its elegance or service. It had become renowned for its profound historical significance. One day, as James and Tiana prepared to launch a new multi-ethnic cultural program, a group of students from various New York schools visited the history exhibit. Their curious, wide-eyed faces lit up as they listened to the stories of Maylin, of James, and of Tiana herself. In that moment, Tiana grasped the deepest meaning of her work. "We're not just changing the past," Tiana said to James, her eyes glistening with emotion. "We're helping build a better future for these children." James smiled, taking in the hopeful scene around him, his heart light and full of joy. "That is the greatest success of all, Tiana." Outside, beneath clear blue skies and bright sunlight, guests and locals alike queued up to visit the Regal, eager to learn the remarkable story behind this place, a story of courage, perseverance, and the extraordinary power of truth and justice. And in the hearts of everyone, James, Tiana, Heather, and the once wounded staff, the greatest lesson shone through, that after all they had endured, the most precious outcome was their capacity to forgive, to heal, and to rise from the darkness into the light of unity and compassion. The grand opening ceremony of the Phoenix Wing at the Regal Hotel was a solemn affair, marking a complete rebirth, a powerful declaration of truth and reconciliation after so many dark days. Warm light from the elegant golden lamps bathed each restored wall, and every intricate carving painstakingly revived by skilled artisans shone with pride. Guests poured in from all corners, community leaders, journalists, and everyday citizens who had once marched in the streets demanding justice. Their presence testified that Mrs. Maylin's story and the Lee family's struggle to reclaim their honor had become a symbol for the entire community, living proof of the power of unity and courage. James stood at the podium, his gaze warm, his expression more at ease than anyone had ever seen. His voice rang out, gentle yet strong. "Today, we're not simply reopening a long-forgotten wing of the Regal Hotel. We're resurrecting an important chapter of our history, a story of truth and bravery that was almost lost forever." He turned to look at Tiana, his eyes shining with deep gratitude. Tiana stood beside him, her heart swelling as hundreds of eyes fixed on her. James's voice grew more emotional. "I want to take this moment to express special thanks to one person, the one who restored my faith in truth and justice, and above all in myself. Tiana Jackson, without you, today would never have happened." Thunderous applause erupted. The audience rose in enthusiastic acclaim. In that moving instant, James drew a small velvet box from his coat pocket and opened it, revealing the exquisite jade phoenix pendant, his family's priceless heirloom. "The Phoenix Wing isn't just a symbol of my family. It represents rebirth and renewal. Today, I want to pass it on to the one who helped me resurrect everything this pendant stands for. Tiana, you deserve to have it." Tiana gasped, tears welling in her eyes, as James gently placed the pendant around her neck. In that sacred moment, time seemed to stand still, bearing witness to a bond deeper than blood, a message of forgiveness, healing, and family. "James, I don't know what to say," Tiana choked out. "This pendant is your family's greatest legacy." "How can I?" James smiled and took her hand. "You are already family, Tiana. Truth is our greatest treasure, and you've guarded it for me. This isn't just a gift. It's a responsibility and the absolute trust one places in you." As applause thundered on, Heather watched from a distance, deeply moved. No longer the doubter and adversary, she had become part of this journey of restoration and transformation. She stepped forward to Tiana's side and whispered, "Tiana, thank you for offering me a second chance. I promise to stand by you always and protect the values we've rebuilt." Tiana hugged Heather, sensing that the most genuine change always springs from the hearts of those who've admitted their mistakes and learned from them. Outside the Regal Hotel, amid the celebration and hope, a black SUV idled across the street. Its window rolled down to reveal Michael Phillips, grandson of Warren Phillips, former conspirator to the Eatons. Michael watched the ceremony with an unreadable, icy expression, like a predator studying its prey. He tapped his phone to call. "We underestimated them. This won't end at the Regal. We need to prepare more carefully. I won't lose anything again." His gaze stayed locked on Tiana and James, as if trying to pierce them from afar. Then the SUV melted back into Manhattan's traffic and crowd. Back inside the hotel, everyone lifted their glasses in celebration, unaware that the fight for truth and justice, despite its great victory, was far from over. Tiana felt a flicker of unease, glanced toward the window, but the black SUV had vanished. Clutching the Phoenix pendant at her heart, she whispered, "James, I feel like this story isn't over yet." James gave her a reassuring, confident smile, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry, Tiana. Whatever comes next, we will overcome. We've won once, and if we must, we'll be even stronger next time." Tiana managed a relieved smile, brushing aside the momentary fear. Yet deep inside, she knew that, like the phoenix she now wore around her neck, this journey is always a cycle of trials, an unending struggle to protect what's most precious. The regal soft lights continued to glow, but out there, somewhere in the shadows, darkness awaited, ready once more to test the courage and strength of those who dare to stand for truth and justice. The story of the Regal Hotel isn't just about uncovering the truth. It's a testament that bravery and justice will prevail, no matter how many challenges lie ahead.